All right. So, I was looking at your resume. I mean, most recently it's in environmental consulting, but you do have politics in your background. So,
Correct.
tell me a little bit about that. Tell me and introduce yourself.
Sure. I started my professional career working for Congressman Jim Leach, an Iowa congressman, for 4 years, and then I worked for 4 years after that for Congressman Jim Nussle, another Iowa congressman. I was on their congressional staff for them, and then I also spent 8 years on Davenport City Council as an alderman at large.
Okay. And, does the environmental consulting factor in at all in terms of what you're going to bring into the position?
No, and just to clarify too, Terracon is an engineering firm that does do environmental consulting, but we also do geotechnical and materials testing. So, and I'm the client development manager, so I'm not going to do any environmental consulting. That's not my skill set. But I think what would come into play in that role is just the ability to build relationships and maintain relationships, build strong connections, and be responsive to, in this case, constituents, which in my day job I call clients. We need to be responsive to them when they need things. We got to figure out how to solve their problems and keep them happy.
All right. Now, after your second term as alderman, you stepped down from the role. Now, what brings you back to city politics?
Yeah, so I left at the end of 2017. I had been on for 8 years. I thought it was just a good time to step away, let someone else give it a shot. I never wanted to be someone who was in a elected position for 20 or 30 years. I just feel like eventually you get devoid of ideas and good leadership. But I've just seen the city make a couple of what I would call blunders over the last couple of years. In particular, the manner in which that the city departed or parted ways with its former city administrator, and just started thinking that I think the city could do better, and thought perhaps I was the person to help the city do better.
Yeah. All right. Now, you say there are some of those blunders. Now, generally, what do you think the city's going in the right direction, the wrong direction? What's your take?
I think we've had some challenges. I think with the right leadership, we can get back on the path and go in the right direction. So I certainly think there's a lot of opportunity, and there are a lot of challenges, but challenges also present their own opportunities as well to take advantage of. So I'm not one who believes that the city's so far off course that it's, that it needs to be restructured, up and down, left to right. That's not my perspective. I really like the staff. I think we have a good quality staff. Obviously, we need to hire a new city administrator and get some consistent leadership in that position. And I think if we do that, we will get ourselves back on the right track and start growing Davenport, keeping our roads good, getting them better, doing all the things that we need to do as a city.
Yeah. Now, what are you looking for in a new city administrator?
Consistency. I mean, I don't know if I would always describe that as what I was looking for, depending on the year you would have asked me, but I think what Davenport needs now, I think Doug has done a great job in the short time that he's been there, but obviously he has some serious health concerns that he needs to deal with. I wish Doug was staying. I understand the reasons why he's leaving. I just think the city needs, there just hasn't been consistency over the last 3 or 4 years in not only that position, but just some other key positions within the city of Davenport. So I would love to see us get consistency in the city administrator position. Their role, he or she's role, is to take care of the day-to-day, oversee the entire staff with their department managers, and the mayor's job is to go out and interact with constituents and really promote the city of Davenport to developers, to business owners, those that would want to come here and grow in Davenport.
All right. Now, what do you think the city is doing right now?
I mean, so we're doing all the things that a city needs to do and has to do, and we do those things well, right? So we get your garbage picked up every single day when it's supposed to. You're recycling. The toilets flush. The stuff goes to where it's supposed to go and gets treated. The police and fire respond when you call 911. We plow the streets when it snows. We have a capital budget, so we do the street repairs in the construction months. So most of what a city needs to do, the city's doing well. That day-to-day stuff that you just expect to happen, you don't even think twice about it. When you need a police officer or a firefighter, you call 911. When you flush a toilet, you expect it to flush. So all those things are, I think, going quite well in the city of Davenport. There's always room for improvement, but certainly a positive to build on.
Now, you mentioned some of these blunders
Yes.
with the settlement agreements, the collapse. Now, how would you address those, and what would you do differently?
Starting with the building, I think obviously that is going to be handled in a court of law. There's multiple lawsuits. I won't be a part of any of that. Maybe I'll have some small role if I get elected mayor in determining how or in what capacity the city should respond to something. But by and large, other people are controlling that process. My focus is on how do we need to be structured as a city to ensure that that never happens again. And that's really primarily two areas. Are we staffed appropriately to handle all of the building inspections we have to do with a set of building populations that are all getting pretty old? We're an old city, and so we've got a lot of old buildings. So my question would be, are we staffed appropriately? Do we have the right number of inspectors? Do they have the right skill sets? Do we need our own structural engineer? We currently don't have a structural engineer. We rely on, we contract that service out. I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't necessarily continue to do that. I just want to know if there would be some efficiencies in hiring our own structural engineer. So my focus is on moving forward. How do we make sure that something that tragic never happens again, and that we're prepared both on the staff side and then also on our city code side. I want to make sure we have language in our city ordinances that allow us to claw back, whether it's rent, to get resources out of negligent landlords, like the individual that owned this building. He was, by all accounts, a negligent landlord. He was looking to cut corners to avoid expenses and costs to keep that building in a livable state. And so I want to make sure we have the appropriate ability per our city code to deal with landlords like that and hit them where it hurts, which is their pocketbook.
All right. Now, you mentioned this going through the courts, and the Iowa Supreme Court has agreed to hear the issue of limited liability when it comes to the city and to employees.
Right.
And that's opening the door to some pretty decent settlements. So,
correct.
What's your thinking if the court agrees that the city and these employees can be held liable?
I don't even know if I can answer that or should answer that, to be honest. I'm not sure what that means necessarily for the city, and depending on how the ruling goes, I'm not sure I could speculate on that. Obviously, I want what's in the best interest of all residents of Davenport. That includes the individuals that lived in that building, both those that perished, those that survived but lost all of their belongings. And then you've got to take into account all the other taxpayers in Davenport and what's in the best interest of them. So that would be my focus going forward, but I don't think I can really add much more as to what it specifically means one way or the other, how the court rules.
All right. Now, among, all the mayoral candidates, transparency has been a pretty consistent theme.
Yes.
Now, how would you go about that, and what would you do differently from what the city's doing now?
Yeah. So I think this is a tough one in the sense that everyone's saying it, and it's almost like trying to atone for something that you have done wrong in let's say whether a friendship or a marital relationship, or you've made the other partner angry, and you said you're sorry and you want forgiveness. Usually, then you have to demonstrate what that looks like. There's the words, and the words are important, that I'm going to do these things, but then the actions have to come behind the words. And so I feel that that's where the next mayor has to say that they're going to be transparent, and then they're going to have to demonstrate it so that the citizens of Davenport see it and believe it. And I don't think there's really any other way to do that other than whoever gets elected will have to do that. They'll have to show what transparency means. Now, I will also add, virtually everything the city does has to be done in public by virtue of open meeting laws. There's very little we can do privately, and for good reason. I'm not arguing with that at all. And so most of what we do is already transparent. I think on the trust side, I think it's being accountable and being accessible outside of City Hall. City Hall can be kind of an intimidating place for a lot of people. It's a formal process most of the time. There's people sitting at a table or behind the dais, and the public is sitting out in chairs. And so I think meeting folks in libraries and in coffee shops, in places where it's easy to approach the mayor and say, I've got a concern about this issue or that issue, is something that I want to do. And I want to be accountable, certainly at any time of the day, but times of day that meets the schedule of the citizens of Davenport. So that means nights, that means weekends, it could mean Sunday afternoons when it works well for them. So I'm going to be looking to go to places, neighborhood places, maybe public buildings like libraries, to have those conversations with the citizens of Davenport.
All right, and another kind of issue that's cropped up over the last few years is there have been some controversial developments kind of throughout the city. You think of the Riverwatch Hotel, you think of the Annie Whittenmeyer, you think of the playgrounds, the whole park downtown.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's kind of your thinking on these projects and economic development in the city?
Yeah, well, I would argue that at least two of those projects are probably not particularly controversial, and I think the majority of residents of Davenport do not think they're controversial, and maybe all three. The old Hojo site is going to be a great project, in my opinion, and I think it's a perfect example of when incentives make sense. I mean, the idea of TIF is to incentivize projects on land that has been tainted or polluted in some way, right? A brownfield or a grayfield type site. So I think it's an extremely appropriate use of TIF. I think the riverfront, Main Street Landing, I believe it's called, like it or not, 100% of the funding of that was from grant and state and federal secured funding. So no citizens of Davenport are paying, taxpayers are paying for that. Now what they will pay for, and this is a legitimate argument, is the maintenance. There will be a maintenance cost to that every year. And so that's something that the next mayor and city council will implement and oversee. I do think it'll be an asset. I do think it'll be an attractive asset that will be good for the people that live in the Quad Cities and perhaps bring some people in to enjoy that amenity. And then I think the Annie Whittenmeyer development, and even some of the naysayers had a hard time, I think, rectifying the arguments that there's something wrong with this development, but we also need affordable housing. And so we definitely need a more diverse housing stock, both in the rental space and in the owner-occupied space, at different price points. And that doesn't just mean low income. I think people assume affordable with low income. There are different price points in the affordable housing market that 80% of median income could mean a first-year teacher making $40,000 or $45,000 a year. Who wouldn't want that person as their neighbor? So we have to grow. I mean, I'm an economic development person. That's what I've done in my professional life. That's what I've done in my political life. And so if Davenport is going to continue to be successful, we're going to have to grow our tax base, and that means our residents and then also our commercial tax base as well.
All right, so I think those are all the questions I had for you.
Okay.
Are there any other questions I should have asked you or anything else you want to say to voters?
I don't think so. I don't think I completely answered, you asked about the building and the separation with the city administrator, and I think I left that part out. And the only thing I would add to that is I think it is the mayor's job in that situation to say no. I don't, unless there's something I'm missing completely, I don't know why the city agreed to that settlement, even without letting it, if she wanted to, if the former city administrator wanted to perhaps take us to court and start that process. I think she's certainly fully within her abilities to do that. But I just feel like the mayor in that situation needs to be a leader and say, there's not enough here to justify this, so we're saying no. And work with the council to make sure that they agree with that perspective. But that's what I would have done, is just would have said no.
All right, well, Jason Gordon, thank you so much for joining us.
All right, happy to be here.
So, I was reading some of your background, and it's a little kind of everywhere. Tell me about that, introduce yourself.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me here. I do appreciate it. Background, I mean, I don't know how far back you want to go. I was born in Keokuk, Iowa, but moved up to Rock Island when I was 5, and so grew up there. But I think, really what started me changing my perspective on life was when I did graduate from high school, and my parents said, hey, what do you want to focus on at college? And I said, I think I actually want to work with the poor. And they paused and said, oh, well, why don't you give it a try? And I said, well, just go out and find poor people and start working with them. And my father said, no, go live with your Aunt Julia. And I was like, oh, wow. So I did. She was a nun who was living in the worst area, probably in the United States of America, in Chicago. So I went up, lived with 5 nuns in that environment. And, you know, when I started hearing the gunshots going out the window the first night, you know, it's like, wow, I'm going to die. So it was, you know, I basically had some choices to make, you know, and I just decided, all right, if this is my time to go, I guess this is where I'm going to go, because I'm not going to go upstairs and talk to 5 nuns and say, call my parents and bring them back here because I'm terrified. But thank God I did stay, because it literally changed my life, my perspective on how terrible people have to live in certain situations. So that was important. Then I, you know, went to school, got educated there, you know, philosophy and sociology degrees, and then I decided to teach. And so I taught for 10 years in Keokuk, Iowa. My grandparents were still alive at that point in time. So I went back there, taught for 10 years, coached there for 10 years, taught some really, really difficult situations, alternative education, behavior disorders, and then actually mainstream kids. History was great. Gives you, you know, having that history degree that I picked up at Western was fabulous. And then, you know, things got rough there. Most people don't know it, but my alternative education kids, amongst other things, they broke in at night and burned my classroom to the ground. So I lost everything there, but I still kept teaching for another 2 years. My parents had been trying to get me to come back to the Quad Cities for about 5 years. And so finally I did that and decided to come back and work at the bank. Worked at the bank for 20 years, was president of the bank for the last 10. So just like you said, a wide range of a little bit of everything, but I think that is really why it translates into being mayor, is that working with all these different types of people, having the financial acumen to actually understand the finances of the city, all those things I think are going to be very important for me to do the job, and I just don't see that anybody else had those credentials.
All right, so, you know, I mean, how do you think that all that experience will, you know, influence your work as mayor? And then, you know, how did you get the idea to run in the first place?
Well, focusing on the first part, literally, I think just all those things that I've done, the different people that I've worked with, from this echelon of people to this echelon of people, all varied, all throughout my life. It's I think translates because you can relate to people, and I think that's very important for this job, because you are kind of the figurehead of the city, and hopefully we will find somebody who can be actually the best person for that job. I think that translates to me.
Yeah, and you know, what kind of spurred your decision to?
Oh, the decision. I had people who actually came to me and said, hey, would you consider doing this? They were disappointed in the choices that they had. That started me thinking about the situation. Then I have I know most of the mayors in towns because of my banking career. And so I just started talking to them and just saying, hey, tell me why I would not want to do this job. I want to start there. And so then they just kind of helped give me a picture of what it was all about. But that's led me to here with you.
All right. Now, you know, overall, your assessment of Davenport, is it going in the right direction or the wrong direction?
I would say I'd say that's an impossible answer, because I think there are things that are going in the right direction, and I also think that there are things that need massive, massive improvement. You know, I've been watching a lot of council meetings, and you said you attend a lot of those, so you know what I'm talking about. There's just so much discord, so much, I don't know if it's hatred. I don't know if it's just people cannot talk to each other, communicate with each other. I think that is not going in the right direction, and that's really where I believe I can help. I really do believe that I can help with that situation. It is going directly where we should not be going. On the other hand, you look at the finances of the city, and people are, just always saying everything's bad, everything's bad. The fact of the matter is, if you really looked at the finances for I looked over the last 20 years, from 5 to 10, we're able to borrow X amount of money based on our total asset value. So that's our debt picture, our debt. So that's what we can do. We were probably around 55%, using 55% of that back in that time. Then from about 10 to 20, it jumped all the way up to, wow, now we're using our debt of around 65% as an average. And then now, just in 2024, at the end of 2024, we were down to 48%. So we're less than half of what our capacity is. And that's a good thing. Back in 2022, our bond rating changed from an AA3 to an AA2. And why is that important? Because when they change those situations, we're now, when we do need to borrow money, and we will need to borrow money, we are borrowing money, it's cheaper. It's cheaper for us to do so. So anytime we're moving in that right direction, and that was getting our debt down, and it was also improving our reserves. And so when we do those things together, the bond rating company said, hey, they look good, they look better, and that's good for Davenport. Those things are positive. I want to keep those things going. The crime rate reduction situations they've had with the GVI program. I want to continue to work with the police and make sure that those things are moving in the right direction. I think those things are moving in the right direction. So I think, you hear a lot of things about transparency, there's no transparency, there's, all these things. Transparency to me is a given. I would never run on just transparency, that I'm going to deliver that. I think that is understood, that we should all be transparent, especially in a situation like this where it's a public forum. We have to follow the laws that we're under.
Right, and I saw transparency is one of the platforms that you're focusing on. So, what would you do differently from what the city's doing now?
Well, in terms of, things are recorded, that stuff I don't think is a big problem. I think where people are still wondering, scratching their head, is about, okay, the building collapsed and the huge payout that happened, okay? I cannot tell you exactly what happened. That's a problem. Now, is that because of legal situations and that people are under gag orders or what have you? I don't know that, because I have not been in there, to be honest with you. You probably know much more about that than I do. But the fact is, those things are there. In terms of just accountability and transparency, the most important thing that the new mayor is going to do is to hire the new city administrator. I feel horrible for Doug. I understand that he's having some very, very tough health issues. I pray for him. But that is out of the gate what the mayor has to tackle. To hire somebody who can now lead the entire staff. The staff answers to this person. We have to get a person in there who understands, hey, we're going to do this properly. We're going to be open with the public to the extent that we can be legally open with the public. And luckily, over the last 20 years at Blackhawk Bank and Trust, I worked with the HR department constantly. I know how to do these things. I know how to, interview those types of things. We got to get the right person in that job. That's going to help with the situation, so that they understand from the very beginning that this is important to the citizens, this is important to me, and we've got to get it done.
Right. Now, touching on, the collapse, some of those settlements, these are kind of big things that are looming over the city that could potentially have some big financial implications. Do you think, what would you do? How would you handle these kind of upcoming financial burdens, really?
I would handle them legally, by the law. So the thing is, again, I don't know exactly what happened. I imagine there's a lot of people who do. The fact that we are all still kind of wondering bothers me. I think we need to, I need to get in there, find out, okay, what can be said, what hasn't been said. If it's all been said, great. Tell the people it's all been said, or it's there, here's where you can find it, here's where you can get your answers. You bring up the the financial situation that we'd be under for paying for lawyers, paying for settlements, et cetera. You know, those are horrible things. But those things are in the past. We have them. They happened. We have to deal with them. We just need to deal with them and move forward. And that's just the way it is. I mean, people are always going to say, well, I don't know this or I don't know that. Hopefully, if I get in there, we can figure out those things. As I've knocked on doors, people are still very upset about that. There is no question they are upset about that. And I understand why they are upset about it. I hope there's something I can do to bring more transparency and light to that situation, especially given the fact I had no part to play in any of that situation. And so, hey, let's find out and let's move on. But we need to move forward.
Right. And, you know, another kind of aspect of that is the Iowa Supreme Court has agreed to hear the case on qualified immunity for the city and to employees. Now, what would kind of your course of action be if the Supreme Court decides, yes, the city and those 2 employees can be held liable for the collapse?
The law is the law, and I would never go against the law. And that's the key for me. We have rules. Let's follow the rules. You know, in banking, it is probably the most regulated industry in the United States of America. What's great about that is you can literally go on the FDIC's website. You can look at Blackhawk Bank and Trust. You can look at what they've done for years and years and years. That's the way a city should be too, quite frankly. And so I've already lived in that environment. I'm comfortable with that environment, and I think it's the proper way to go. If the Supreme Court rules, we should follow the ruling.
All right. Now, I think those are all the questions I had for you.
Sure.
Was there anything else you want to share? Any other priorities? Anything else you want voters to know?
Priorities. No, I mean, do you think we missed anything?
Maybe economic development. Like, how would you want to go about that? I know there have been some controversies in the last few years about some developments.
Why don't you ask that as a question?
Yeah. So, you know, in the past few years, there have been a few projects that have been controversial. Think the Riverwatch Hotel, think the Annie Wittenmeyer, the affordable housing. So, you know, what's kind of your idea? What's your plan for economic development in Davenport?
Well, we talked about finances, and I think that's huge. It's very important. We have to develop Davenport in a fiscally responsible way. So we have our debt picture, we have our availabilities, we know what those things are, and then we want certain things. And then there are grants, you know, like the park downtown, the downtown park, that was a big controversy as well. It was going to take maybe $200,000 to maintain that park, but we got most of the funds from a grant, from a federal grant. We have to take advantage of those situations. Then we have to assess, can we keep it up? Should we be building parks before we can take care of whatever we have? I don't believe that's very smart to do things that way. I want to make sure that, hey, the things we have, we can afford to do, and we can afford to do more. Let's maybe look at that situation. But in terms of just economic development, we need it. We have to keep growing. We need residential. We need rooftops. You know, we need commercial. I love the fact that we're expanding the sewer line over to the west there. It's going to open up a lot of ground for that to be developed. And I think the West has, when they lost Hy-Vee, the West End, it's terrible. That says to me we have an economically blighted area, and maybe that needs some attention. Maybe that needs some help. So it's just a matter of having a person who already understands economic development. You know, at the bank, that's what we do, not just develop projects, but we put the money in to actually make them real. So I'm comfortable with that. You need a person who can, if there are people that come in from the outside world and they want to invest in Davenport, they're probably going to come to a mayor. They may go to the Chamber of Commerce, but there's a good chance. You want somebody in that position who's positive, who loves Davenport like I do, and who understands the finance situation, and has also sadly seen people really destroy themselves on spending money they didn't have.
All right, well, Jim, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much.
So, just to start us off, saw you move to Davenport around the 90s.
Yes.
So what brought you to the area?
Well, I moved to the Quad Cities and the Iowa side in 1993, and it was here for another job. And then I opened my own business once I got here.
Okay. Yeah, and that environmental consulting, I'm curious. Tell me about that.
What I do, and I work nationwide. I don't have local work at all, and I work primarily with the federal government. And I help teams do good planning, teams of experts, and I facilitate those, and I help write documents and do public involvement and do conflict resolution.
Yeah, that sounds like it translates pretty smoothly into city government. Is that how you got involved?
Well, I got involved as a neighborhood advocate for a situation we had going in a neighborhood, and I helped people organize against it, and it worked. And then I was asked to run for city council by many of my neighbors.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, how did that, how was your experience in city council?
Well, city council, its job is to lead the city. And in order to do that, you have to have good information from staff and others. And so I asked a lot of hard questions as a planner. That's my job. And some of those questions were welcome and some of them weren't at the time. So that was a challenge. But I feel like I served my ward very well. I was on the ground, I was working with constituents, and I ran the second time unopposed.
Right. So, how does that bring you to, want to run for mayor?
I have been on the inside as a council person and been on the outside as a member of the public, active for 5.5 going on 6 years now. So all that experience has taught me what works, but it's also taught me what needs to be changed. And I've been staying up on the information, I've been staying up on the litigation, I've been staying up on the issues, I've been active with the city council this entire time, both as a member of the public, as a council and member of the public. So I feel that I am fully prepared to hit the ground running with the election. And I've been doing homework, with other cities, as well as talking with other experts, Project Now for homelessness. So I'm doing my work now, even though I haven't been elected yet.
Right. Now, tell me some of those things that need to change.
What needs to change, one, is the council has been bullied and intimidated. We've got to stop the Mattson legacy. So what we need to do is get the council and staff working together, and staff needs to share more information with council up front and much earlier. And I see my job as being the mediator to make sure that council has the information they need from staff and others before they need it to make the decision. Right now, they're getting the agenda at 5 o'clock on Friday, and the meeting is Wednesday. That is not enough time. The other thing, the first order of business, other than getting council up, trained and up to speed, is to get a new city administrator. And this new council and the new mayor, myself, will be doing the interviews and selecting the new city administrator. So that is absolutely critical. We need someone who is ready for the challenge.
All right. Now, a few questions coming off of that. I saw you spoke to Bettendorf about how they run their city councils, and those meetings are fast. So,
Yes.
What do you want to take from them and from other cities about how they run their business?
Those meetings are fast only because they have been having public meetings with council, okay, where the public can attend early on for the issues that are complex, that take a lot of information, that needs discussion. So by the time it gets to committee of the whole and city council, they've already publicly, because the public can attend their work meetings, they've already hashed a lot of the issues out. So they don't have to do that at the actual meetings. So I find that very important, and I see changing our management update meetings before the committee of the whole into something more of that kind of work where detailed information is provided early on issues that need to be addressed later on.
Okay. Now, when it comes to the search for a new city administrator, I mean, the city went through this really not too long ago, but what would you look for in a city administrator?
I need a city administrator that is informed, curious, strong, and ready to take on the challenges. We've got some serious challenges coming up in the next couple of years that involve staff, that involve finances, that involve litigation. And we need to have somebody that is ready to go, ready to look at our staff, and ready to make changes as needed, and be prepared to do that kind of hard decision-making to make the city more efficient and to be able to handle the financial challenges that I believe are coming.
Right. Now, I mean, some of those challenges are linked to that litigation.
Yes.
You know, how will you handle that, and some of the other fallout from the collapse?
The interesting thing is we now have a date before the Supreme Court for the question on qualified immunity. Do two employees and the city have qualified immunity as it relates to 324? I can't say anything that we'll do until we get a decision from the Supreme Court on qualified immunity. And hopefully that happens relatively soon. The arguments are early October. So hopefully we get a decision. So there's no way to tell what to do until that happens.
Right. Now, have you thought through the scenario where the court sees this case,
Yes.
they decide yes or no, these employees do not have qualified immunity, they can be held liable? What's kind of the thought process you've been?
Well, the next step would be then is we've had a lot of litigation that are waiting for this decision. So I suspect that the civil cases will start pretty quickly if the city does not have qualified immunity and the two employees don't. And at that point, we're going to have to talk to the legal department and maybe bring in an outside company firm that has not been involved at all and talk over the options of settling, carrying them through. We're going to need some really good legal advice on that.
Right.
We're talking big money.
Oh, yeah. All right. Now, I mean, there are all these issues that you're having to tackle, but, what do you think the city is doing correctly right now?
Oh, I think one thing they've done very well is we now have a plan for dealing with Mississippi floods. And we've already, and it's a very good plan, in my opinion, and it's step by step. We've already put in mechanisms so that the water doesn't come up the storm sewers. And I'm very interested to see how that will work. I'm going to say when we have another flood, because I'm sure we will. And there are also identified areas where the roads need to be raised, because there's low spots on Rockingham, on River Drive, and get those raised up so we have more appropriate approach during higher elevations of flooding. So I think they've done a very good job of that. They've also done a good job with the study with the Corps for first elevation, which is at certain levels what structures would be flooded. And it helps the owners deal with flooding before it comes and get ready for it. I think that is really good. And the third thing that the city has done is City Council just passed a resolution to hire the Corps of Engineers to look at watersheds. So we just had a big flood on Duck Creek that caused a lot of damage. We need to look at how to deal with those floods from a watershed standpoint. So they're doing that very well, and I'm really pleased with that.
All right. Now, I think one more question for you. So, you've been at, nearly every city council meeting?
Yes, I have.
And I see a lot of what you raise your voice about are some of these developments that are coming in at different parts of the city. So, how would you handle some of those developments, some of those incentives as mayor?
What I feel is when the council agrees to offer some kind of incentive to a developer, then that developer needs to get to work. There has to be a timeline for those incentives to be used and the developer to start work. We have work all over the city that has not started yet. And that's unacceptable. I believe that we have to do our agreements better. I believe that we need to make sure that the developers keep high standards for everything that we do so that every step we take betters the city of Davenport. I'm looking for smart development, not just any development, but I want council to consider development that will move the city forward and bring in more development of that high quality standard. And we also need a good diversity of affordable and safe and healthy housing. We really need that. And I'm hoping that we get quality developers. Again, that's not what's happening. They say they're going to, but it hasn't been started yet on many of those developments. So I'm looking forward to working with council on evaluating that as well.
All right. So I think those are all the questions I had for you.
Okay.
Are there any other questions I should have asked you or anything else you want to share?
I just want to say that because I've been involved for now going on 6 years, I know what's going on. I've worked with council. I know most of them. I know most of the other city administrators and mayors. I want to work with the other cities as well so that we work on our common issues as well as celebrate our common successes. I want to work with the police department. We have a problem with recruiting. We need more police officers. I also want to work on making sure that our city codes are implemented and enforced and do it consistently and stringently, regardless of who it is. So my job is to be the intermediary and to support council and staff in making informed and really good decisions that the city of Davenport deserves.
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
You know, just to start off, one of the things that stood out, I mean, seems like you have a passion for spreading sunflower seeds. Tell me about that and tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, in the summertime, I fill my yard with sunflowers. I harvest the seeds, and I give them to people all over the country for free. It's kind of like a God's love thing, spreading joy. I'm a songwriter, and I perform at music festivals around, and I go by Sunflower Slim, because I used to be slim. Now I'm not. So it's just part of spreading joy, and people love them. It's such a happy plant, and so that's that.
Yeah. And yeah, you know, and introduce yourself to, you know, anyone else that hasn't gotten the chance to talk to you.
Well, I'm a Davenport native, born and raised in the city that I love. I've been involved in community involvement in the city of Davenport my whole life. I've been around all kinds of elected officials. I've watched this city, bad times, good times. I have fond memories. 4 generations of my family live here now. I'm a graduate of Davenport Central. Back when it was Davenport High School, my grandmother went there. So we have a long history of this town, and I'm excited to be the mayor.
All right. And, you know, that excitement, I mean, what led you to, you know, filing for your candidacy here?
Well, I kind of feel like I've been planning my whole life to be Davenport mayor. I've followed city government and municipal planning my whole life and watched the businesses come and go and grow and fail. And I've owned 3 businesses myself in Davenport. And this is all in Davenport. It's not in books or in theory. It's watching this community. So when I was 17 years old, I opened a music store on Locust Street. I had actual floor space when I was still in high school. And I'm interested in promoting and marketing Davenport to the world, the positive stuff. We need to heal from all the trauma we've had in the past. And I'm interested in working with everyone in the community and just have a positive change for the future.
Right. And, you know, when it comes to some of those good times and bad times, I mean, where do you think the city is going? Do you think it's going in the right direction, the wrong direction?
I think the city needs a lot of help. And I want to, you know, the Davenport needs a mayor that's going to tell you what needs to be done, is not going to be afraid to tell you the truth, and someone who's going to be positive and willing to bring all sides to the table, including a lot of sides that haven't even had an opportunity ever to really be heard by the city of Davenport. And yeah.
All right. Yeah, is there, anything in particular that, you've seen the city do, actions that you've seen taken that you'd want to change, and, how would you change it?
Well, the conversion of the one-ways is a big topic with citizens. They're all against it. I haven't found one person who is in favor of it. So I'm wondering if, and I don't know why the council in the last 2 years hasn't done it, because the project's taken so long and the cost has increased so much from $2 million. Now we're at $4 million, and I think it's going to be 7 or 8. Why the council, when they got sworn in, why didn't they make an action to stop that? They have paved the streets, 3rd and 4th Street. They've paved them, or they're working on paving them, and it looks beautiful. So why can't we just go with beautiful new streets and alter our plans and keep it one ways like it always has? It's really kind of like a historic thing. People have stories of being downtown and riding the ones when they were kids, and it's really sad that this is happening.
Yeah. Now, what do you think is going well in the city?
What I think is going well in the city is we're having more community involvement and family togetherness, like the alternating currents concerts. I think that's a great thing. I think we can expand on that, and it shouldn't just, we need more festival events and more family togetherness and community involvement. And we need to bring more people to the table that feel comfortable.
Right. Now, looking through kind of your list of priorities, one of those seems to be, reducing and prioritizing spending. So, tell me what that looks like. Does that look like a reduction in services, putting money back in people's pockets? What's your plan there?
My plan is to empower families. So I think we need to restructure and rethink the whole way that we collect taxes. So as the community grows and we get more people involved, and I'm really excited about helping businesses grow, local business specifically, but anybody that wants to come to Davenport and spend some money, I'm all for it. But as we get more players and more money is invested in the city, each family's individual burden of property taxes and fees should be lessening, should be going down, but it's not. So I think we need to restructure and rethink everything and to aim towards that, because that will actually spark economic development, and it'll be a positive thing in many ways. If you got more money in your pocket, you're spending more money. It's helping people, and so it's just all for the good.
Yeah, it sounds like shifting that burden more towards some of those businesses.
Well, yes and no. Businesses should pay their fair share, but they also have to realize that what they're going to get out of it, the pluses they're going to get out of it. Davenport is a gold mine. It's profitable. One thing that is lacking is, and it's really sad, and I haven't heard any candidate talk about, is the Rockingham corridor, and how it's so sad down on Rockingham Road since the grocery store pulled out there. I could almost cry about it right now. So that is a gold mine. We need to bring investors into that Rockingham corridor, because anytime you have a business district that's surrounded by a residential community, that's a potential to make a lot of money there. And historically, Davenport has made a lot of money off of Rockingham Road. I remember when there was 2 strong grocery stores there. There was an A&W at the end of Rockingham. There was a Dairy Queen. There was a Hardee's, a McDonald's. There was a drugstore. It was so strong. And the housing hasn't decreased since then. So we just need more. We need a cheerleader for the Rockingham corridor.
All right. Now, you know, there are some of these big traumas you mentioned in the city. There's the collapse. There are some of those questionable kind of settlement agreements. You know, and the city, as a result, has lost a lot of money. Now, how do you address that? How do you handle that?
We need to heal from that. That is a very traumatic experience, and it should have never happened because actually there was a city inspector, a Davenport native, who had alerted them a long time before it happened of the problems, and he was pulled off of it. He wasn't given the opportunity to do his job, and so that's why we are in the situation we are now, facing $150 million lawsuits at least. So we need to heal from that. We need to grow, and we need to be positive, and we can't dwell on that anymore. We have to move along. We have to settle those deals. It's not proper for a sitting mayor to talk about pending litigations, you know, strategies for court, but we need to get this over with.
Yeah.
We were wrong.
Yeah, and you know, coming off of that, I mean, the Iowa Supreme Court has agreed to take up that collapse case where they're deciding if some of those city employees can be held liable. I mean, you know, are you still thinking settlement in that scenario if the court decides that those employees can be held liable?
We need to financially, well, they're going to be, if they're held liable, it should happen. But we still need to settle. We need to get it over with. I don't think that really affects it. I mean, it's criminal, some of the stuff, it seems.
All right. And you know, one last question for you. I mean, you say you're not raising money on your campaign. So, you know, why is that your strategy here?
I feel like I've lived my life in this community, and also I don't want to be in anybody's back pocket. All the other candidates have special interest groups behind them, pushing them, paying them to run for office. And if I don't take a dime from anyone, then I'm only responsible for the citizens of Davenport, and that's the way it should be. The two former aldermen should be able to run on your record, and they can't do that. I was a good friend of Ellis Kell. I was a good friend of Dr. Joe Singh, state senator, and when he was on the city council, he never took a dime from anybody. He was well known. If you didn't think that he did a good job, boot him out. And that's the way it should be. You could, and I think you should be able to stand by your record, and if you have a record where you can't actually say that you did anything for the community, why are you running for mayor?
Those are the questions I had for you. Are there any other questions I should have asked you or anything else you want to say to voters?
Yes. My name's Todd Perk. I'm a Davenport native. I love this town. I could probably cry about it right now just to tell you. I want to be a strong leader. I want to bring everyone in the community to the table. I'm the guy that picks up the garbage in your neighborhood, the dead animals and all that kind of stuff. I'm the guy, they know me at the golf courses. They know me in the parks. They know me in the bingo halls. They know me at Festival of Trees. I perform there 2 times every year. I get to perform for the special needs kids. And then I have a regular show with my buddy, Wes Wells from Port Byron. And then I'm also their mascot, Bubble the Bear, which I get to sing with the children. So they know me in the parks. I fly kites. I paint rocks. I give them to people for free. It spreads joy. It's about peace, love, and joy, and being someone who can promote Davenport to the world, because we are the pinpoint location of the heartland of America, and the future is looking bright for Davenport no matter what the past was like.
All right. I think we're good.